So, check one, two. Check 1 2. We should be.
Ooh. Check. Check a
Who's
one.
the greatest college team in football, Heath?
Alabama.
Alabama.
You know why they say roll tide? Do you know why they say that?
No.
Because saying roll crimson sweater wearing elephants takes too long.
I see. That whole thing.
So, check 1 2. Check 1 2. We should be.
Ooh. Check a
Who's
one.
the greatest college team in football?
Did you know you can support the Technology Show when you shop at Amazon.com? Become a friend of the show by starting your shopping at thetechnologyshow.com/shop. It's Tuesday, August 27th, 2013. Live on the first try from Rural Pickens, South Carolina. I'm Matthew T.G.
I am Heath Mullican.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Technology Show, weekly podcast featuring theology, technology, and everything in between.
The Theology Show.
Yeah. This is episode 215. As soon as I said that, I thought, oh, wait a minute, I've got these reversed.
So let's talk about inside baseball here for a minute. Way back in the day when we were first talking about doing this show, we were like, okay, what are we going to do it? You know, these are the two things that we're passionate about. And we tried, and it was, we had said, okay, we're going to blend the two words. We can either do technology or theology. Just about. I mean, it was a tough one.
It was
a tough decision to make. But now, looking back on it, 4 years later or so.
Welcome to the Theology Show.
Theology. All right. So a few things happened this weekend. Help me to understand all the Ben Affleck Batman thing here, okay? Because I'm a fan of neither. So.
Well, when the internet broke, okay. When the
By the way,
news
my
came out.
son-in-law is cool with this.
Yes,
so
I read jamming. Yeah, I read his thing. Most of us, if you're a comic book person, Ben Affleck's been in one comic book movie that was Daredevil, and that was terrible.
Okay.
And so that is our mindset. Ben Affleck has since he's not the Geely Jennifer Lopez guy anymore. I mean, he's an Oscar-winning guy. And so when they named Heath Ledger Joker several years ago, I remember thinking, well, that's a terrible choice. Guy won an Oscar. So I think it's just, you got to think, man, when you live in your mother's basement, you're 35 years old, and you got nothing else to do than be upset about Ben Affleck being named Batman. So there's that. I think what I'm hearing, what my sources are telling me, he'll be in the Superman Batman movie, and then he'll direct at least the next Batman movie. And I think I'm fine. I think it'll be good.
And he signed on for 13 appearances.
No, good night.
Did you know that?
13.
He'll be in 13 films.
No.
Now, yes.
This is what my son-in-law told me.
What? I did not know that.
This is what Jamin told me.
No, I don't think many of our viewers, know Jamin, but Jamin this is his deal is Batman. He is Batman all the way.
Yeah.
And my initial reaction was negative. I was like, this is just kind of, I don't like the thought of it.
Yeah.
After talking to him Sunday, it totally changed my perspective because as somebody who's so big into Batman, to know that he was as comfortable as he was with it made me comfortable.
Yeah.
So the 13 appearances thing, signed on for 13 different things. So that'll be Justice League stuff.
But it's just Warner Brothers. It's not necessarily superhero, not necessarily, or it is superhero.
13 Batman appearances.
No way.
Now that doesn't mean 13 Batman movies. It might be it might be like
13. Yes. Are you serious?
Okay,
he's going to be 60 years old.
Wait a minute. Here's what we know. That his Jamin sources are way better than your sources.
What are you talking about? Hey, listen. Don't doubt me on some of these things.
So let's real quick here. The whole Miley Cyrus thing. There's so many ways we could go with that. So personally disappointed. A lot of things. But here's my thing. Confounded. Does MTV not bear any responsibility whatsoever with stuff like this?
Listen. What? Anybody who was shocked by this, like
Will Smith.
This is the world. This is the world we live in. This is what happened Sunday at the VMAs. That's what we've been leading to. That's MTV has been pushing the edge, pushing the envelope. I mean, when one of your main shows and one of your main money makers is a show called Teen Mom, it benefits you to have teen moms. And so why not glorify the behavior that leads to what? Teen moms. So it was, I didn't watch it.
In all seriousness, your take really is this, that if you are somehow appalled and surprised by this, coming from MTV, you're a little bit naive.
Yes.
Okay.
I can understand. I'm not shocked that was on MTV. I'm shocked that Miley Cyrus did that. And I tell you what was shocking even more is the number of people who defended her on Facebook. I saw mothers saying, "Oh, get off Miley's case. Her new song is my jam." And I'm like, her new song that talks about doing drugs and being all loosey-goosey. I'm like,
my youngest is a sophomore in high school.
Right.
She goes to the public school, high school in Liberty High School, Liberty, South Carolina. Come home yesterday, and I mean, this was the topic of discussion. And, the question, hey, did you see? Have you seen?
Yeah.
And so my heartbreak is this with the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, let's be honest. For every kid who hadn't seen it.
Yeah. Oh, you Googled it. You've seen it now.
So
this is. I'm going to tell you what was probably the most shocking thing for me, and it just shows a double standard. Is from what I would say the people who don't hold the same biblical worldview as me, the people in the entertainment world who have expressed such shock and outrage. Yeah. Like that to me has been shocking to me. The people who have come out and said,
that's the part I've enjoyed.
Like the people have I'm not saying I don't agree with them. I'm just saying they're like, I can't believe Miley. What in the world? I'm like, well, wow, wow. So,
were you going to say something, Teej?
No, no. Like I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we just that's like we're playing to the hand that we're supposed to be playing into.
Yeah, we draw.
TV's
I agree with that. I agree. We draw attention to that,
but you can't not.
Right, you can't. You can't help but do it. And my point is this: that when the question of the day at the local high school is, "Did you see?" For every kid who answers no before the day is over, they will see it, and that is what bothers me.
Yeah, but is it?
This better be profound.
All right, I don't know. You haven't. If Nicole saw that, does Nicole think, "Wow, that's really cool. That's the way I want to go," or does Nicole think, "Oh my gosh, what a train wreck"? Like that to me is it depends on your response to it.
Every kid's
I hope so. And so as it is sparking a cultural conversation, it's your hand is forced, and that's what upsets me the most about this. You have to say something about it. You have to do this. I feel like, and particularly as parents of kids,
right.
My heart breaks.
It was a topic of discussion at the supper table.
Even less for even. More for a 6-year-old that I know who likes Hannah Montana. And it's like how that's what kills me. I can think of a young lady right now who I love and care about, who knows this stuff's going on too. And man, it's just something that how do you walk through that with a 6-year-old?
Or how about I said at supper last night, this was the topic of discussion. How about the other 15 and 16-year-olds where it's not the topic of discussion? And I mean that in a bad way. I think the discussion we had was good last night. Yeah. And where we have parents in churches who are oblivious. They're just oblivious. And that breaks my heart. So, hey.
And I'm telling you, and when we're getting ready to get into our interview, if I'm a youth pastor or even a pastor, I'm pretty certain this is going to come up during our adult Bible study tomorrow night as a matter of prayer.
I could see like with youth, I could see you doing like seriously a pros and cons list. Put it up there and say, okay, what's great about this? Like what's a wonderful thing about this?
Yeah,
they're probably not going to list too many things. All right, now what's not so good? And hopefully you can lead some sort of conversation. But it's just that
I'm sitting here thinking we've been really unfair because we haven't introduced Matthew Deprez, who's our guest today.
Yeah.
And he's probably like holding back. He probably has an opinion on this.
You guys can't see him right now.
Let me do this. I'm going to tell our guest, our listeners who our guest is, and before we question him on anything, he's got a book. Let him weigh in. Today our guest is Matthew Deprez. He's a sought-after speaker at colleges, conferences, and churches on issues surrounding, here it is, youth culture and intergenerational ministry. He is currently on staff at Frontline Community Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and is the author of 4 books, including Rediscovering Jesus and Join Generations. He's married to Megan, and together they have the most wonderful, outstanding baby boy in Isaiah. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Hello. How are you guys?
Doing fine. So, hey, before we get into your book, why don't you, Matthew T.G. said you were going crazy there, so talk to us a little bit.
Can I plead the fifth on any comments relating to this?
Absolutely not. Go ahead.
It was interesting. My wife and I actually watched it, I guess Sunday night, and what was aside from what everybody's been talking about, what was the most bizarre part to me was the bears and like the teddy bears and like all of this stuff just running around on the stage and thinking, like, really, is that really what is like captivating to kids right now? Yeah. I mean, like, what was it about that? I think aside from what everybody's been mentioning, it was just a bizarre experience. Yeah. Like the whole thing was weird. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to add that you guys haven't said yet. So yeah.
So next year, Tony, you'll be tuning in, right?
Yeah, probably not. I am, Matt. I'm curious what's your opinion about because I talk about our daughter Nicole, where she comes home. This is the topic of the day at the local high school. I mean, it does seem to me that from a Christian perspective within our homes and maybe even in our youth groups and stuff, that you don't avoid this kind of stuff, but you run to it and use this as a time to speak to values and issues and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think that's exactly what it's created. Actually, I don't think that just because it's on TV, people are leaning into it and saying, "Hey, that's awesome." And so I think what's good is that there's been a lot of discussion about what is appropriate and what is inappropriate, and I think a lot of people are understanding this is pretty bizarre. It was pretty, inappropriate, and so. Yeah, so I don't think that just because it's been put on TV that people are leaning into it and going, "I want to do that." At the same time, the exposure to it is another conversation altogether.
Yeah,
so
I totally agree.
What's crazy to me, and what I'm trying to wrap my little brain around, is everything that she did has been done before. I mean, wearing hardly nothing, simulating sexual activities. I mean, all that has been done before, but just like she just took it to a whole nother. It's never been done with such gusto, I guess, is what I'm hearing. And in the rehearsals, it was very tame. And so, like, even the MTV executives are obviously happy because it's the most talked about thing. But what the live performance was a lot different than what they rehearsed.
And that's kind of been the thing. It's
right.
Like, all right, we're not going to actually we're going to surprise everybody and just do something. And it hasn't been, we can go back. Let's go back to a certain Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, good gravy. Yeah.
The wardrobe malfunction.
That's right. Let's just pop a surprise in there, just to really do something.
Yeah.
And it kills me. But by talking about it, we're defeating the thing.
All right.
Let's talk about how to prevent that in our culture.
All right. Well, Matthew, we had you on, a while back and talked about intergenerational ministry and an ebook you had written about your church's journey. So what's been the response to that ebook? And then tell us about your new book and how that came about.
Yeah, a few years ago, we took a big shift in our church, really, but a lot with our student ministry, and we started asking the question, how can we be more intergenerational? And so it was some really good wisdom that was given to me as we started vision casting and processing these new things. As somebody said, "Hey, why don't you just take some time to write out some of this stuff and then provide it to your church for free?" And so they literally said, put like a 3 whole pamphlet out and at least expose some people to it, get some language created and stuff. And so started writing, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it was basically like a miniature manifesto kind of thing. It was about 50 pages that we put on our website for free. And so we called it Why We're Unashamedly Intergenerational. And what didn't surprise me was all of the people from Frontline downloading it, all the people from Frontline hearing about it and stuff. It was really, really exciting. What did surprise me was how it started to spread, and the actual ebook, because it was free, just started to spread all over the country. And so what ended up happening was, I think to this day, it's been downloaded, I think over 8,000 times is the best guess, which is really hilarious. Like, it's just a book about our journey. And so as I started speaking, as I started traveling, as I started talking to churches, is a lot of people were saying, okay, this is great that this book is about your journey, about Frontline. What does this mean for us?
Yeah.
And so what Join Generations is, this new book that I just wrote. What it is it's an updated Why We're Unashamedly Intergenerational book, but it's about 3 times as long. So it's about 150 pages or so this time, and a lot of the context to like Frontline specific ministry has been kind of removed, and it's more about how you can apply this stuff in your own context in church. So there's a lot of stuff about our journey still. There's tons of stories, but it's more just removing the context of like, this is our own journey, and saying, how do we apply it to the larger scope of the church? Because obviously people are interested in it, and so that's kind of where the idea of the book was birthed. So.
Now, your new book, Join Generations, is broken up into 3 parts. The first part is about looking back. So what are some of the misconceptions people have about youth ministry and being intergenerational?
Yeah, I thought it was really important to start out the whole kind of process and the whole thoughts by talking about the past and looking back. And so there's a whole section in on there on kind of misconceptions or different things that maybe they're not misconceptions, but they're just kind of things that we think. And one of the very first things is this idea that adults and students hate each other. What's fascinating is that I think that we have this perception in society that kids don't like adults or senior citizens, and senior citizens can't stand kids. And that's actually not true at all. In fact, what I've found more than anything is that when kids have relationships with senior citizens and when senior citizens have relationships with kids, the depth of those relationships goes much, much deeper. And it's a new sort of thing. It's a different sort of thing than having like relationships with kids who are of the same, or people of the same age as us. And so I'd say the first thing is adults and students not liking each other. And this isn't even like, what's fascinating is this isn't even just a church problem. This is like a business problem. I mean, like the way that we interact with each other is huge. So we live in a world today where senior citizens are kind of being told they don't matter anymore and that their opinions aren't valid. But then also you have kids who are too young to be able to lead. And so you can't really connect those generations when those kinds of things happen. And in places where kids are told they can lead, what's ended up happening is because senior citizens are kind of cast to the side and told they don't matter anymore, is that kids who are leading today don't have boundaries or information about like failure or things that they might experience in life that senior citizens could offer to them. And so what's been really cool is there's my brother-in-law who works in the Syracuse area. His business is actually creating like mentor relationships between the younger people in their company and the older people in their company. The younger people are teaching older people how technology is changing, and then older people are teaching younger people. These are just like the principles of life that are true. And so, I heard this quote from a fortune cookie when I was like in high school, and it's brilliant, but it said the philosophy of one century is the common sense of the next. And so in this case, like the philosophy of one generation oftentimes is the common sense of the next. Now, we share different political values, different ideologies, different economic thoughts, different sociological thoughts. And we share different ideas and values, but there are still principles that are true today. And so I think it all kind of stems from this idea that adults and kids don't like each other. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is this. One of the misconceptions that I think we're having to deal with in our society is with kids being young, we refer to kids a lot as the next generation, kind of insinuating they're like the generation to come. And I don't think anybody would actually say that this is the way they would believe. But when we call kids or refer to kids as the next generation, I think what we kind of insinuate is this idea that you're not valuable until you grow up. Maybe you turn 18 and you're in the church and you can start tithing because you have a job. And so I think what a lot of this misconception that we're trying to change here at Frontline has been is, no, kids are not the next generation. Like kids, you can do something significant to change the world now. You're actually a part of the now generation. But what's fascinating on the other end of the spectrum is that it's not just that we don't believe in the next generation, because I don't think it exists. We also don't believe, if there is no next generation, we also believe there is no has-been generation either. Right. There's no generation that's like too old to matter. Point. And so what we would say is everybody is a part of the now generation. We all have value in the kingdom of God. We all have values as humans, no matter where we are on the age spectrum. And so kind of the way we've defined intergenerational ministry, that I've probably said this in the last time we talked, is an 8-year-old can teach an 18-year-old who can teach an 80-year-old about Jesus, and an 80-year-old can teach an 18-year-old about Jesus. That we can teach each other what it means to follow Jesus no matter where we are on the age spectrum. And so I think it's trying to learn, what do we learn from people who are younger than us, and then what do we learn from people who are older than us? And it looks completely different based upon our generations. Like my 2-year-old son, he's 2.5. Every time he hears a fire truck or an ambulance, which we hear all the time. We live 1.5 miles away from the downtown area of Grand Rapids. We hear them all the time. Every single time he hears that, Isaiah stops and he actually says, he said, that's a fire truck. We need to pray for the fire truck. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? We need to pray. And his exact prayer is, Dear Jesus, and I don't even know that he really knows what he's praying, but he says, Dear Jesus, we want to pray for the fire truck helping people. That has been so challenging to me.
Sure.
Just from a 2.5-year-old teaching me what it means to lean into like other people and like helping other people and processing. Yeah, you know what? There's a fire truck and an ambulance out there for a reason because somebody's hurting, and so that's kind of the way we learn from younger people. So we can learn from all age spectrums, no matter where we are on that spectrum. So I'd say those are some of the misconceptions we're dealing with.
Yeah, a couple of follow-ups here, Matthew. So on the first point that you made, is it, man, I just throw this out and I could be totally wrong. Do you think that generations have misconceptions towards one another because there isn't this intermingling, so what happens is we talk at each other but not to one another?
Yeah, I totally think that. I think a lot of these misconceptions, even the idea that adults and students don't like each other, simply stems from the idea that they don't talk to each other oftentimes. And so they've created these things. They've thought about these things. I mean, we've all heard it in churches, like senior citizens don't like kids because they're going to put a hole in the wall during youth ministry. I mean, like, how often does that actually happen? You know, I mean, are kids just blowing holes in the wall during youth group and stuff? And so I think that there are just a lot of misconceptions because they're simply not communicating with each other. So yeah, I think I would totally agree with that.
Also, the other follow-up question is on your second point. The generation of tomorrow. I get everything you're saying. I'm wondering in the back of my mind how that squares with some of the research with delayed adolescence, and we seem to have a generation that doesn't want to take responsibility.
Right.
I think you're at least familiar with Melinda Denton. She's co-authored this study with Christian Smith, The Religious Life of American Teenagers. Had a chance to talk with her one time, and she's a sociologist at Clemson University. It's 20, 30 minutes from us here. So we've met on several occasions, and she said in a sociology class, there's a video that she plays. 60 Minutes did a piece about 2007 on the millennials. And it gets into this delayed adolescence. And she said, I show that video, and then I want them to respond to it. So these are sociology students at Clemson University. And she said, my surprise has been this, that their reaction to that 60 Minutes piece, and you can get it on YouTube, it's a 20-minute piece, is their reaction is, I think that's a good description of me. So, when you make your second point, I'm just wondering, so how does that then square with this whole concept of delayed adolescence? And there seems to be a lot of credibility in that. And if that's the case, then it's a generation that is prolonging taking responsibility.
It's a great point. And so we've looked a lot at delayed adolescence here, very familiar with Christian Smith and Melinda Denton's work. And so one of the things I would say is this, that the action of actually doing something significant in your life or doing something significant for the church or with Jesus is different from the actual desire to do it. And so what I think we're experiencing a lot with delayed adolescence is a sense of apathy, not the fact that kids or these millennials can't do something significant for Jesus. And so I think there's a difference with that.
Good.
They could do it, but obviously there's tons of things leading to delayed adolescence. I mean, one of the things we don't talk about a lot is this idea of like even like health insurance and being on your parents' health insurance for so long. You don't have to grow up or be on your own health insurance until you're like 26 or 27 years old. And so there's a lot leading to it, to not kind of growing up and being out on your own.
Yeah.
But I think it still doesn't change the fact that kids could do something significant if they wanted to, and we can't discredit that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I was in seminary at Asbury Seminary back in the 80s from 89 to 93, and I tell you, a professor who anticipated, now he didn't call it delayed adolescence, but this was a professor, or Dr. Donald Joy, and he was doing a lot of research, and he was really getting after Christian parents in terms of human sexuality, the way that the way that young people were being so encouraged to go to school. And he said, "Now that's good. You go, you get your degree." He was all for that, but he said you have to recognize that for young people, they're coming into their sexual prime. And he said, we have Christian parents who are saying to their young men, young women, "Well, listen, I'll pay for your education as long as you stay single. But if you get married, then that's it. You're on your own." And he was really speaking out against that, saying, "Wait a minute, support your son, support your daughter, either way." And he felt like at the time, again, this is 1990 when I had him in class, that we're pushing the wrong way here. And I think he was making valid points before anyone could see where this was going. He had a sense of what was happening within the culture.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, let's talk about the second part of your book here. It's called Looking Up. What's some of the biblical reasoning here and examples that you found in terms of being intergenerational?
Yeah, the whole idea of looking up is, and I understand that heaven is all around us, God is all around us, but this idea of like looking, like what does the Bible have to say as we think of God vertically, right? And so not necessarily horizontally to each other, but vertically towards God. And so, when I started doing this whole intergenerational like research and study and stuff, what I found is that the Scripture is totally full of different ideas and different thoughts revolving around being intergenerational. I mean, you have really young people to the extent that one of Israel's kings is 8 years old. Yeah. And then you have like Moses, who is like, I don't know, is he 120 years old when he's leading Israel? And so, there's all sorts of age gaps as far as, people leading Gideon. It says that he was the youngest in his family, that kind of stuff. So there's that. But some of the narratives that are fascinating, one of them is with Jesus. This is not original to me, but I find it fascinating still. This is from Kara Powell from the Fuller Youth Institute. But she was talking and said that in Luke 2, at the end of Luke 2, when Jesus, it's the Passover time, and Jesus is 12, and he goes to the Passover with his family, they attend the Passover, and then they leave. And but what ends up happening, and this is a crazy story, but what ends up happening is Mary and Joseph leave, and they don't realize that Jesus isn't with them, which is like, please, somebody call DHS now.
Right.
Major parental neglect there, right?
Yeah.
And it makes sense because men and women may have traveled separately, and so Mary thinks that Jesus was with Joseph, and Joseph thinks that Jesus is with Mary.
They should have just texted one another.
Yes.
Yes. Of course, right? Yeah, of course. Tweeted at them or something. But,
imagine how different it would have been if there was a cell phone around.
It's true. But so they travel on for a day, they go to set up camp, and then they realize, oh, Jesus, like the Son of God, he's not with us, and so they are looking everywhere. They freak out, basically. They go back to Jerusalem. So that's a second day of travel. So that's 2 days. Then they try to find him. It says after 3 days, so that's basically 5 days of looking. Where did they find him? They found him in the temple courts talking with the teachers and leaders of the law, which is fascinating. Now, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, they did not find him in the youth room playing Xbox and having a pizza party.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my. So, I might have gone too far saying that. But
no, that's awesome.
But what's fascinating is this. What's fascinating is that the teachers of the law, they didn't realize that Jesus is the Messiah. They think he's just a brilliant kid.
Yeah.
So it seems as though there was something very natural about kids and adults interacting with each other in the temple. And what I love about it is this, and it's obviously Jesus, so he's brilliant, and he's the Son of God, but he is talking to them, and they're learning from him, and it says that he's asking questions to them, and so he's learning from them, right? So there's this interplay of how they learn together. They're learning from him, he's learning from them. And it seems to me that in Jesus's day, it was very normal and common for kids to be in the temple interacting with each other. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this whole idea in James, in the book of James, it says that religion that is pure and faultless is taking care of widows and orphans. And I love that. So my wife and I adopted our son, Isaiah. We got him from the hospital. We actually adopted him. And so I believe that God says multiple times throughout Scripture, this whole idea of taking care of widows and orphans. I believe that he literally wants us to take care of widows, and he literally wants us to take care of orphans. But if you look at that from a more metaphorical point of view, and somebody could just kill me for bad exegesis here, but I wonder if when they say religion that is pure and faultless is taking care of widows and orphans, I wonder if one of the reasons why the writer is saying that and why God wants to get this across is because if you think about it, the only people typically who can take care of widows are younger people, and typically the only people to take care of orphans are older people. And so I wonder, and I mean, again, this might just be me and really bad exegesis, but I wonder if what Pure Fatherless religion is this idea of taking care of widows and orphans and us taking care of another generation than us. And so there's all sorts of examples in Scripture. There's a lot with Samuel and Eli, and kind of like that whole story there where Eli can't hear the voice of God anymore, but Samuel can hear him, and Samuel is in a place where he's next to like the lamp and he can hear God, but then Eli has kind of moved out into his usual place where he's kind of further away from where God might have been speaking to him. And so, so you have Samuel that's learning from Eli, but then you have Eli who's learning from Samuel when Samuel says, hey, this is God speaking. And so, I think there's a bunch of different examples in the Bible from that.
Yeah, now listen, this is what we're going to do, Matthew. You raised a really good question about the widows and orphans, but we're going to put a disclaimer at the end of the show that your remarks have nothing to do and are not endorsed by the show.
There you go. That's right.
No, let's use it. Let's actually use it to launch into the fact that we have a great proponent of the idea of adoption coming on the show in February. Russell Moore, who wrote a book called "Adopted for Life," has agreed. After 2 years of asking, that's fine. I think we annoyed him to the point where he's ready to do it. To an interview in February, and we are pumped about that. Yeah.
So I want to just want to be clear. Mary and Joseph look around, and it's the only time in history God is not with us.
I wonder if Jesus got grounded. I mean, that's what
I don't know.
Can you imagine the panic and the pandemonium at that moment? Like,
we lost the Son of God.
Gabriel's like, I gave you one thing to do. One thing, and you can't even do that.
That's right.
Oh, my goodness. The last part of your new book talks about looking forward. So what are some practical tips you would give to a church looking to move to a more intergenerational ministry?
Yeah, the third section of the book is by far the longest. As we've kind of processed, or as I've kind of processed, as we look forward, what does this mean? What does this look like? And so I've just told a ton of stories. But basically, one of the things I talk about is this idea that programs seldom change people, but people often change people.
That's so good.
And so we live in a world, and we live in a society, especially in the church, where we over-programize so much. And we expect that a person is going to be transformed and changed because of coming and sitting their butts in a seat.
Yeah.
And the reality is, and don't get me wrong, I mean, we preach every single Sunday. We preach a sermon here at Frontline, and we think it's really, really important. And we believe that it leads to life change, those kinds of things. Sure. But really, if you think about transformation, and you think about your own lives as Christ followers, like, it's through people. Right. It's not because you came to a program. Even program, even things that are based around programs, like, you think about Alpha, or you think about AA or Celebrate Recovery. It's the relationships in those programs that matter. And so what I'm really, I think, is the most important thing that we think in our church, or we find in our churches, is that we have replaced relationships with programs. Yeah. So if we can get relationships back to the core of who we are in the church, mentoring, discipleship, whatever you want to call it, I think we're going to be at a much better advantage when it comes to these relationships. The other thing is even processing through as adults, like, why am I the way I am? And what you can basically boil it down to is this. Well, it's probably because you had somebody who was older than you speaking into your life, whether it's a grandparent or grandparents, or it's an aunt or an uncle, or your mom and your dad, or somebody in your church who cared for you. I would bet, and I'm Wesleyan, ordained Wesleyan, which is why I have such good theology with my James Widows and Orphans passage. But I would bet all of my Wesleyan money, even though I can't bet, that we are in the church because of intergenerational relationships, and we love Jesus because of these relationships that we've had. And so it's even processing and thinking through, like, what has that journey been for me, and as I've grown up. And so the other thing for churches is to capture stories of where this is happening, because this is happening in all of our churches.
Yeah.
And so what I think is that the ignorance, as far as not knowing a lot of this stuff is happening, is really working to our disadvantage here. And so it's becoming aware that these stories are happening. And so we try to share as many stories as we possibly can about the ways that we can grow together. Another thing is I love the Fuller Youth Institute at Fuller Theological Seminary, and they've written a bunch of materials that they've called Sticky Faith. And one of the things that I love about it is that they are based out of really well done longitudinal research. And what they're finding, and it's not just Fuller, it's Lifeway did a big study on this back in 2007. But what they're finding is that kids who have intergenerational relationships have a much higher probability of having a deeper faith or a deeper spiritual maturity because of those intergenerational relationships. Lifeway's research study in 2007 is interesting because what they would actually say is it's not just having one intergenerational relationship. A kid who had five, when they studied it, a kid who had 5 intergenerational relationships actually had a deeper spiritual maturity than a kid who might have had 1. So it's not even just having one intergenerational relationship, it's having like 5. So I think for a lot of churches, it's exposing ourselves to a lot of this research and understanding that we're not just doing this because we think it's a cool idea or some passing fad. We're doing this because it's leading to the depth of spiritual maturity in kids and the success rate for them to love Jesus for the rest of their life, not just for 4 years while they're in high school, and so I think that's part of it too. The other thing that I would say moving forward is understanding and differentiating, and it's kind of like the next generation, now generation thing, where it's really is it a semantics issue, like a dumb semantics issue? Maybe is it petty? Yeah, it's probably a little petty, but I think it's important nonetheless. And I would say getting churches to understand what the difference between being what I've said is multi-generational and intergenerational. And I would say it like this, because a lot of people would say, why don't you call it multi-generational ministry? We call it, we call it being a multi-diversity in our churches or something. And I would say this, the reason why I would say intergenerational ministry is I believe multi-generational ministry is like the repeat button on iTunes. It's like 2 arrows going around each other, but they're not intersecting with each other. And so it's like having younger people and older people in the same room. Yeah. And people think that you're going to build relationships with each other just because they're in the same room. And but you're not actually learning more about the other generation than when you previously walked into the room. And so I would say that would be multi-generational ministry. It's like the repeat button idea. And so I would say the intergenerational ministry is like the shuffle button on iTunes. It's where you have 2 arrows, but they're actually intersecting with each other. And it's when you know more about one generation, than when you previously walked in the room, a generation that you're not in. That is where I think the big win is. Yeah. And I think there's a place for both. There's a place for multi-generational ministry in the church, but there's a place for intergenerational ministry in the church. And so I think a lot of churches believe that they're being intergenerational when they're actually just kind of doing repeat button ministry. They're just got them all in the same room, but they're not interacting with each other. So so that's kind of what I would say.
What a coincidence that, here, let me put this up here, that on the cover of your book, hey, look at what the symbol is.
It's a shuffle button. Yeah,
there we go.
And it's really because we believe the big win happens when intergenerational relationships take place. And part of Fuller's research says that it's intergenerational, or that it's being in a worship service with people who are different generations than you. And so it might not necessarily mean that you have to interact with people every single week, but just that exposure to different worship services matter. But I think the big win happens when we're able to know more about another generation than when we walked in the room. Intergenerational ministry is when a senior citizen goes to a 16-year-old and says, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. How can I pray for you?" Or, "What are you struggling with in school? How can I tutor you?" And then intergenerational ministry is when a 16-year-old goes to a senior citizen and says, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. I heard that your spouse just recently passed away." And talking to them and kind of delving into that. And so those are some just examples of like actually interconnecting generations, like intersecting those arrows, as opposed to the arrows going around each other. So yeah.
Great distinction. And let me just say this, just want to applaud you here. I appreciate you talking about sticky faith, and we've talked a little bit about Melinda Denton and Christian Smith stuff. One of the reasons we do this show is that we want to resource people, and one of the things that I've been concerned about is that there is some great, credible, research-based stuff that's out there, and we so quickly glom onto anecdotal things or pragmatic, what works right now at 6 o'clock, and we're not stepping away to look at what are some studies telling us. And there are just some great resources out there that can inform the way that we are doing ministry, so that faith is passed down, that the next generation does get it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I love about what the Fuller Youth Institute and Sticky Faith is doing is that they've taken very, very well done longitudinal research, and and what Fuller's mission is basically to conduct research and then leverage that research into resources for the church. And so what I'm just a huge fan of with Sticky Faith is that they've taken really good research and made it incredibly practical for us, and said this is the way this is fleshed out, and that kind of thing. And they're working with tons of churches. They've been we were part of a cohort with them for a year in 2011, which I think I've talked about with you guys on one of the interviews that we've done. And we did that for a year, and they're actually onboarding for churches next year. They worked with over 100 churches in 4 years, some of the most forward-thinking churches in how youth ministry looks in the future, how relationships look in the future, and taking this really good research and making it very, very practical, putting flesh on it. So that's really cool.
Well, Join Generations comes out September 21st. Tell our readers where they can go to get the book and the resources that go along with it.
Yeah, eventually, and it's not up yet, but joingenerations.com will be launched. And then if you want to get more information or you want to connect with me, then you can go to my website, which is MatthewDeprez.com.
And Matthew, let's say that there was a certain church in South Carolina that thought about hosting for the other churches around here basically a day-long seminar on this topic. Can another or can Matthew Deprez be booked for those kinds of engagements?
100%, yeah. I love doing that kind of stuff.
All right.
So I mean, I would love to do that. I'd love to talk with leaders and love to go to churches and just meet people and hear their stories and share some of the things that we've learned at Frontline. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And again, where can our listeners just find you on the internet?
MatthewDeprez.com or on Twitter at MatthewDeprez.
All right. Thanks so much for stepping in today and being part of this interview. Blessings on you.
God bless, guys. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Wow, some just really good stuff there.
And he didn't mention this, and maybe I'm not supposed to, but I am. But the first 2 months the book is out, the PDF's going to be free. So you'll be able to go to joingenerations.com and download the PDF for free.
Which really speaks to his heart on this, what he's trying to accomplish.
I mean, the paperback is $39.99, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
This is just a passion on my heart.
Yeah,
it has been for a while, and
Well, what I said to him there, I was giving him kudos on talking about research-based stuff. This is, I had a chance to go to a theological symposium back in June, and one of the privileges I had is to sit on a panel, and I looked at educators and I looked at DSs, and I said, I know, I understand we're all busy and we all get locked into our worlds, but in the midst of all of our worlds that we're locked into, we are missing some great research that's out there. And so this Sticky Faith and what the Fuller Youth Institute is doing, you've heard me over and over again, The Religious Life of American Teenagers. You don't even have to read the book, for crying out loud. Get the DVD, watch it. It's about an hour and 15-minute documentary, and there are just some great things in there.
One of the things that Matthew and I talked about last night on the phone was that we've really only had professional youth ministry for about 40 years. I remember Orville Butcher at Skyline, and Jimmy Johnson was his youth pastor, and really the first full-time youth pastor in the Wesleyan Church. And so we're really looking at 40 years And yet all the statistics tell us that 80% leave the church at age 18. And so 40 years ago, we started this precisely so 80% wouldn't leave the church. And so, I mean, as a former youth pastor, I mean, I have, there's wins and losses, and I'm just trying to think, if something's only got a 20% success rate the way we're doing it, something's got to change.
And Dr. Melinda Denton, when she was with us, which we need to get her back, but her point was that doesn't mean you don't do youth ministry.
Right.
The point is you try to find ways to get the generations talking to one another, the intergenerational where relationships are being formed.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to download.
Download of the week.
Yay! So I'm not quite sure our download of the week is a download. Matter of fact, I know it's not. But I want to talk a moment about MOOCs. These are massive online courses. These are full-blown college courses.
Yeah.
Nobody
for
wants
free.
to hear about your MOOCs. Please. So that discussion.
You're in one of
Your
your
personal life to yourself.
You're one of your crazy MOOCs again.
No, again, what does that stand for?
Massive online courses. And these are, we put 3 links into the show notes, and it's amazing the courses that you can get, full-blown college courses. And these are courses that, college students are taking, but that's absolutely free. And it is growing. At the symposium that I attended back in June, they talked about this, and the question is, what does this mean for the future of education? And there is a big push right now because you don't get college credit for doing these, but there's a push behind this to get that to happen. Where what does it mean that someone could get their college degree for free online, and how is that accredited? What's that going to look like? What needs to happen? On some of these MOOCs, if let's say you took a course from Harvard, they are now working out things where they may actually give you credit if you came to the campus into the traditional program. So and I use that as an example. I'm not saying Harvard's doing that, but some of these.
I would also, we don't have this listed. iTunes U has so many great things. Before. And but yeah, Coursera. I've looked on there, like some of their editing, like computer editing kind of stuff. I mean, it's amazing what is out there
for free.
Yeah, and then there's unofficial stuff too, Khan Academy. Like that too. They're not affiliated with a university, but still there's some high quality
still education.
stuff.
Well, CNET in their story on MOOCs, they cite Khan Academy as.
I don't want to hear about CNET's MOOCs. Quit bringing up people's MOOCs. I don't want to talk about that. Listen, we already talked about Miley Cyrus and her MOOCs. I don't need to know about anybody else.
Well, then let's go ahead and move on to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
Yes.
The United States is a very strategic place for people to interact. It's ironic in a place with all the freedoms to interact that people don't do it. In light of the deficit of contact, what better thing could happen than to have a bunch of people move into your neighborhood and build houses of worship? Missiologist Todd M. Johnson on the research from Gordon Conwell's Center for the Study of Global Christianity that shows 20% of non-Christians don't know any Christians. Source, churchleaders.com.
Ballmer's late-to-the-game approach over the past 13 years hasn't fully moved Microsoft on from the shadow of Gates and the PC, and he'll never get the chance to fix that himself. Instead, his retirement is an admission that he isn't the best person to transform a software giant into a devices and services company. Tom Warren, in his article, Steve Ballmer's 13 years as Microsoft CEO leaves a mixed legacy with little vision. Source, The Verge.
Admitting you are lonely is like holding a big L up on your forehead. John T. Cacioppo of the University of Chicago, who studies how loneliness and social isolation affect people's health. Source, Slate.
Whichever faith you think is the one true faith, it's undeniable that the majority of this church spending is going to support false doctrines. Upgrading a church's physical plant doesn't enhance the soul-saving capacity of its clergy. Matt Iglesias, economics correspondent over at Slate, who thinks the United States ought to start taxing churches. Source: The Washington Post. All right, so there's one study that I want to, there's one article here I want to get to big time, and that is the one at Slate on loneliness.
Yes.
So that was the shortest quote in all of this, but the author of this article does a fantastic job in citing studies here on loneliness and the impact that it's having. We talk within the culture. She says we point out smoking, we point out obesity as these big health risks, but loneliness now is twice as likely to claim you as these other two things in some recent studies. She also alludes to the internet, how the internet can alienate us. So we think with all the social networks at Twitter and Facebook that these things will bring us together.
Yeah.
Not so. Studies aren't. Studies point to the opposite. What happens is we look at other people's lives and we feel pathetic about our own. So it drives us inward. One area of the internet, though, that she says seems to be very hopeful is when it comes to relationships. There's a study out of the Chicago University, the University of Chicago, that couples who met online seem to do better. Divorce rates are lower. And I am not surprised by that, because what happens is when you go to someone like eHarmony, you're getting points of compatibility. I have been a big fan of this for a few years now and continue to be, and the research continues to show that as a great way to help couples get together.
Now all right, I want to get this straight. What you're saying is that the algorithms that eHarmony and sites like that use are more accurate than when you wrote true love and then counted the letters in your name and got the percentage. Is that what you're saying?
What about the Daisy method, where you pluck off the
she loves me.
Hey, when I was in high school,
me not.
And when I was in high school, every year they would do this, where you took a little quiz and then it would you would get your results like a week later of and you were always hoping cheerleader, baby, cheerleader, that you'd be, and it would just never work out like that.
Well, I'm big on assessments that get to areas of compatibility.
Right.
I think there's a lot to that, and that's what these dating sites do.
I know. I've had two couples in my church, and one of them is at your church now, who met online. Sabrina and Stephen.
Right.
But it's weird because they almost seem embarrassed. Especially the couple I have now, Tad and Julie. When I talk to them. When people say, "Well, how'd you guys meet?" And I'm like, "Why don't be ashamed of that?"
Here's the thing. How many times have we had conversation with young people where, your own kids, where you try to encourage them before you let your emotions get out there. Try to use your head. And so I say to people that I was very atypical as a teenager. I was able to see adults flame out in relationships growing up. So divorce was a very big part of, I'm not talking about just in my immediate family, but I'm talking about watching aunts and uncles. So my whole approach to relationship was this. This is at 16. Okay, what qualities am I looking for?
Right.
Okay, that's the only person I'm going to date. What I say is that this is what these online services do, because before your emotions ever get involved, it's looking at these qualities that you want, and it's saying, oh, okay, here's a pool of people who meet those qualities. So before you ever get your heart out there, you now have compatibility with people who share the same values as you do. And eHarmony does a great job at this. Now, this isn't an eHarmony commercial, but maybe we should get them to sponsor this episode.
Oh man.
But we put a link to this story.
Yeah.
I think that another overall thing that's great about this story is it goes back to this thing that we are created for relationship.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I think it goes back to the whole topic today. I think we're created to have relationships with people of the opposite sex, but also of different generations in us. I believe this makes us a more fulfilled person.
Yeah, and this article gets into that. Just
Paul Tillman in the chat room says the last marriage he did was for a couple that had met online. He said they were the most stable and complimentary people.
Yeah. So, and I know both you guys were really sad when you heard about Ballmer because you guys are big Microsoft fans.
No, this is the only thing I have to say about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Ballmer!
Yeah!
Wait, is this? Yeah.
I mean, this was my reaction when I heard the news.
Steve Jobs and Bill Gates would have never done that. That's a sign of a desperate man right there. That's a sign of a desperate man. Desperation. That's so sad.
Who said sit down?
Okay.
All right.
Oh, he's not done, guys.
Oh, my dear.
That's all right. We're running out of
I
time.
have 4 words for you.
4 words.
I
Have sweaty
love
pits.
this company. Yes!
I have sweaty armpits.
It's okay. You're not going to get any more of that, you guys, because he's gone.
Yeah.
Never was a man so passionate though about the company that he worked for. I mean, don't you wish sometimes that you'd have people who'd run into church on
Wait a
Sunday
minute.
mornings this way?
I've seen this at camp meeting. I've seen this at camp meeting. I know I have.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah. Anyway, he's gone. Microsoft. The Surface is not selling too well. Let's not mention Vista.
See,
the Surface, the full blown tablet that runs Windows 8, the full blown thing. Tom Merritt says is doing respectable. It's the RT, which is the whole confusion.
Their problem. They took a $900 million loss on those.
Yeah, but I'm just quoting Merritt. Merritt says most of that comes from the RT side.
$900 million is. They took a loss on it. Like here, I think that go listen to. Yeah, Tech News Today. Their episode's called Retirement, and it's based off of his Ballmer screaming, developers. But a great thing. Like, I think that management, I do think that he has strengths for the company. He's no product evangelist though, not the guy you want. I mean, as you saw today, not the guy that you want.
I didn't know you were gonna play that, but that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
On the front stage. You go to YouTube and just type Steve Ballmer.
That was like an Easter egg, man, right here in the show. Okay, really fast. Link you to the story from the Washington Post. We're not going to get into it, but there is a growing number of people who feel like it's time to go ahead and tax the church. And can I say this, that sometimes some ministries and the way that they spend money, they're not helping the church.
I'm going to just tell you this, okay? I believe with all my heart that the way that our nation is going, that this is in my lifetime we'll see churches taxed, and it will affect large churches as well as small churches. I mean, you think about the property that churches own.
This article says that they believe that what the government's leaving on the table by not taxing is about $72 billion.
Well, yeah, that'll run the federal government for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But what I'm just saying that I believe.
I don't know. I could argue both sides of this.
I believe that that's one of the tools Satan will use to try to destroy the church in America.
I don't think we'll lose it because it's not just the church that gets it. It's nonprofits. And I think that there's enough research out there that shows, especially with Christian organizations, that money is not wasted. You take a Salvation Army. If you want to do something for disaster relief in an area, get it to the Salvation Army, because somewhere around 85 to 90% of that's going to get to the cause itself. Administratively, only about 10-15%, and the government's well aware of that. And the government and their charity things, they do awful. I mean, a lot of that's eat up.
Did you hear the story about Bill Clinton's charity where it was like less than, it was like just a real small percent had actually gone to what they were trying to
when
fight.
the government puts their hand in it, and the government, there are senators and representatives who are well aware of how Christian organizations. I'm just saying, go to the article, look who they put on there. Look at real quick, pull it up. What picture do you see on that article?
What
article? The article we're talking about here with the tax on.
Listen, who is it? Who do we see?
Come on, Heath. It's loading.
Yeah, you see Mr. Smiles himself. Joel Osteen.
Osteen.
And so I think that there are ministries that I just said earlier. Sometimes the church needs to be careful the way it spends its money. Sometimes it's so opulent that you give critics firepower. All right, listen, we're taking the week off. Teach, where are we going to be, man?
Pumped.
I know
tomorrow at this time.
Matthew came
tomorrow
in
at this
all
time,
day. He's been like, whoa.
Yes, I've been very happy because tomorrow at this time we will be basking in the 98-degree humidity that is Haiti, or as some people that I know love to call it. No, it's amazing. I'm pumped to be there. We're going to be there with Greg Edmonds. So during this next week, if you want to go back, you can see a couple of shows that we did with Greg, and hopefully we'll bring back a little bit of recorded footage. Be in
Haiti. So there's no show next week, so just be aware of that. We thought we would entrust it with Heath, and then we thought of that again and said, no, we're not going to do that. It'd be a sports talk show for a whole hour, or WrestleMania or something. All right. When we get back,
awesome.
When we get back, our guest is going to be Chad Cullum on September the 10th, and he is now with Global Partners, going to talk about what he's doing there. And on September the 17th, then we have Dr. Devin Smith. He is in charge of online schooling at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. On October the 1st, we have Dave Beaver. That's going to be a pre-recorded. And for those that might not know who he is, Heath.
Dave is an assistant DS with the Greater Ohio District, does some interim pastoring stuff, but is the president and founder of Lead Strong, and just doing a lot of events, one at Ohio State, but going to talk to him about a book he's got out and his MMA fight last year. So.
All right. Heath, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
HeathMullican.com, and from there you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
All right. Teach.
They don't have the internet in Haiti. Well, they do. Hopefully, you can find me on the Novacom cell network there in Haiti.
You can find me at AKC64 at Facebook and Twitter. If you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, leave us a voicemail by calling us at 3049-TEOLOGY. That is 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. Hey, we may even play your comments on the air.
Yes.
As always, thanks for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. That was weak. Say that again, Heath. Goodbye.
Later.